Hey there, and welcome to Between the Lines. I'm your host, Chris White, and this is the podcast where we take a look between the lines from the message this past Sunday here on the Hill. And this past Sunday, Pastor Chris Varnell, you brought the message, and we talked about build the church. And so you're here with us today. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
I'm doing great, Chris. Yep. Doing
Awesome.
Good.
Great message Sunday, by the way. I absolutely loved it. I was leaning in. You picked on me a little bit, so I thought that was good. Got a good laugh.
I did. You got a good laugh. You got a good laugh.
I was like,
fun.
man, that was good. That was good. Interesting. You were talking about Legos when you brought that up, and I'm definitely not a fan of Legos. I remember when we first got that Lego set at that staff retreat, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't stand these things.
Yeah.
My son doesn't like them either. He gets about maybe 5 minutes into it, and then he's like, done with it. Can't do it. Too many instructions because you have to follow the instructions or it comes out wrong, and he's just I don't know where he gets that from, but
it's amazing to me that you either have a passion for Legos or you just don't like them at all. There's not a middle ground.
There's
really.
not. There's either you're absolutely in love with them or can't stand them. I'm definitely on the can't stand them side of things. So Pastor Chris, starting out, just tell us a little bit about yourself and all of the things that you lead here at Victory Hill, just for our audience listening.
Okay. Well, I have been here forever. I grew up in the church, actually. I kind of started coming to the church on the bus. Okay. So, I've been here a long time. But I currently lead children's ministry, which is what I've done forever. And that's truly my calling, usually where my giftings lie there. And then I do small group ministry right now, where I oversee and help and support our small group leaders. And I don't know. I do all things food.
All things food, yeah, for sure.
That's something that, everybody, all things food. If there's a dinner, if there's a whatever, I'm usually in the middle of it. So
you head up a bunch of our major events too, like our Fall Fun Fest that we do, and our family picnic thing that we do, all of those different things.
Yeah.
So, awesome. I always like to start with something that's kind of fun and just a little bit interesting. And so I've got a couple questions for you. Okay. They're just kind of random, okay?
Okay.
So,
okay.
If you had to pick, the first one is this, if you had to pick one restaurant to eat every meal at for the rest of your life, what would it be? What would the restaurant be?
Oh, my goodness.
This is a hard question.
It is a hard question.
Like, if it's just like, what's your favorite restaurant? That's easy,
I can't even
right?
choose where to eat on Sunday. I'm like, where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? Okay. Oh, wow. And no hard regard to weight, right? Because,
just
some places would
what's
just
your
be
favorite place to eat?
Okay. I'm going to say that I could probably eat Taco Bell every day.
Oh, wow. All right. I hear you.
John's over
here like amening you. I think he eats Taco Bell every day. And they serve breakfast, right? Like,
yes, they do.
Breakfast?
They do.
Nice.
But I could probably do that because,
Yeah, pretty simple menu. Same.
Yeah.
See, I would pick somewhere like probably like a Bob Evans or like a Cracker Barrel because they serve a variety of foods.
Well, I thought about that, but that makes me feel old.
Oh.
Because I am told that old people eat
Is that
Bob
what it
Evans
is?
and Cracker Barrel.
I love Cracker Barrel and Bob Evans, so I think it's great. And you get you can do breakfast, you got lunch stuff, got dinner, so it's like a variety of things. But I will say I could probably eat Taco Bell. I don't know about every day, but I could eat quite a bit, so I definitely enjoy that.
Yeah.
What is the best, this is more of a serious question, so what is the best word of advice that you've ever received in life?
Best word of advice that I've ever received in life. Oh boy. I don't know how many people have given me advice. Yeah. I don't know. I'll tell you what, this is one, and I have given this piece of advice because I think somebody did give it to me.
At some point in time.
So it's really irrelevant in my life right now and was only for a moment. But don't ever let your children sleep in your bed with you or you'll never get them out of your bed.
I would say that's a good piece of advice for
and
parents.
I mean,
sure.
I know that a lot of people do the family bed, and I'm okay with that. But for me, I was like, so I mean, I was a stickler about it. I wouldn't let him, even though my oldest daughter would always kind of come in the middle of the night and sneak in bed, and we'd never even know she was there because she'd lay like at the bottom of the bed, which I guess didn't bother me that much. But yeah, so don't start him in the bed, or you're never going to get him out of the bed.
That's good advice. I'll say that for my dogs. So like our dogs are in our bed, and it's definitely that way now. I'm never getting them out. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, it's definitely. I can see that being good advice.
Our dog was welcomed into the bed. The children were not.
Different season of life, right? Completely. That's what it is. That's probably the truth about us. I don't think like we had our kids really sleep in the bed with us. They always had a crib, and we would take them back to there. So I think that's good advice. It's a good one.
Hey, it doesn't, like I say, it's only for seasons, but anyway.
Hey, it's good. It's good. All right. So on Sunday, you talked to us about Build the Church. So that was what the message was on. Before we kind of jump into that a little bit, give us a little summary of the idea of this message, and then kind of like what led you to this point. And you talked about that a little bit on Sunday.
Yeah. I originally started thinking that, I should do something like mother-y related because it was Mother's Day.
Yeah.
But then I kind of was like, I don't know. And then at one point I thought, moms build little people. And so I think that was the first thought I had.
Okay, cool.
And, and then that just kind of kept going, and then expanded to just really, me feeling like that God's saying that we're entering into a new season of faith. Or a new season for churches, because I think we have been through this season where we felt like church has been a little bit attacked, or a little bit, it's been a loss for us. Yeah. It's not been the same. It's not been, church has not been, but I think, God's saying now's the time. It's time to just, let's go from here and build it back up again, and build ourselves so that then we can be the church, is really kind of where it ends up being, I guess, because, we're not in the business of building a church. We don't want to just have a church for the church. We want to be the church.
So true.
But so I think it kind of went that way. And then, like I said, Sunday, the Lord just kept bringing things to me. And I just was like, okay, this must be where we need to go. So, but I probably wouldn't have thought about it. Yep, that's kind of where it started.
That's awesome. I think it's interesting too. Like we talk about building the church. I think like 2020 and COVID and all that stuff really made us step back from church and look at it from a different perspective and see the things we've talked about this as a staff, is like see the things we miss about church, and like gathering together is that whole season where we weren't able to really be in a building together.
Right.
And so I think it also, when you take a step back from something in a season like that, you start to see the things that need to change and things that we need to do better at. And so I know you talked about, we'll kind of go through some of that, but I think that's a big part of it, is that God's wanting to make some changes and needing to do some things, and we have this responsibility we have to step into.
Well, and I think God prepares you for the season ahead. I think that, and I think the church is going to see things we've never seen.
Yeah.
After this pandemic.
Oh yeah.
I think we have seen things we've never seen. I don't think we ever it into our minds that some of the things that we'd be doing today, we would have been doing, you know? And so I think when you're, I think the Lord just starts beginning to build in us those things that we need to be able to accomplish what he's going to call us to do. So, yeah.
So true. One of the points that you made on Sunday is you said this, and I wrote it down. It says that church has become a weekly experience when it was meant to be a daily lifestyle. Now, I thought this was so good. Can we talk a little bit more about this, kind of explain what we meant by this statement? Is that church wasn't just meant to be this weekly thing, but it's supposed to be something we live each and every day.
Well, yeah. And I think, if you look back at the history of church and you look at Acts 2, where church actually was birthed, it says they met together daily, that they, and they took care of one another, and they did, church looked a whole, if you go back to that, it's just, church was just what they did. It was their life. It wasn't, it wasn't just, hey, even from the fact that in the Old Testament, they just gathered at the temple for feasts and important events. And so it's a transition from going from that to being a daily experience, or a daily uplifting of the people. And I think that, I do think for a lot of people, it's it's a weekly obligation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is really sad because it has come to that for us sometimes. I think that it's just like, well, we're supposed to go to church, so we go to church, and thank the Lord we do. I know that we're, we absolutely should, but it has to be more than that. And, number one, that Sunday experience needs to be, we need to come in with a different mindset, I think, sometimes than just, hey, I'm just doing this because that's what I'm supposed to do. But then if we are really going to be the church, it has to be a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It has to be daily living it out in front of people and daily being the church, And so I think that's more what it's about. It's just, it's not supposed to be an experience. We've got to be the church, and to be the church, we have to live Christlike every day. Yeah. And we have to be constantly in tune with what God's doing. So
it's not about going to a building. I think that becomes the thing, is right. Like we like, oh, I'm going to church. Like I've always heard that my whole life. We say that all the time, right? But it's not like we're going. We are a part of the church, and if you're a part of something, right, you're living a part of it on Monday, Tuesday, like all throughout that. And I think there's a lot of power in that. Somewhere along the line, I feel like we all get to a place where we shift that in our minds, and we do start thinking about church as like a location. Yeah. And we have to, I think it takes discipline in your life to continually remember, no, I'm a part of this thing. Like I'm a part of what's going on and what God's doing. And so I think that's a big step to take and to always remember.
Yeah. Well, and I think, just to remember the church is a living, breathing thing. And that's, and we've got to realize that truly we are the only vessel that God has to reach people and to serve people. And, you think about it, I just think it always amazes me when like a natural disaster happens. Yeah. The first people on the scene is the church, and you can, we've been involved with some stuff, around here that if it weren't for the church, nothing would have gotten done. And so it's so much of a living, breathing thing. And, I think that sometimes when we just narrow it down to that Sunday experience, we shortchange God and we shortchange ourselves into what we can possibly do for him. Yeah.
So good. You talked about the story of the disciples on the road to Emmaus and their encounter with Jesus. So we have these two men who were walking, all right? And you highlighted that they said this. I wanted to kind of read it. It says, were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us? And so you talked about how our hearts need to have that kind of that burning on the inside when we're spending time with Jesus, and that desire. And I think it talks about that relationship piece. So let's talk about that a little bit and kind of what we meant by seeing that.
Yeah. And, I had taught that to my kids in Journeyland a few weeks ago. And when I read it, I was like, oh man, how can I put this into this, how does this fit? Because, I don't know that I'd ever really, how you read something time and time again.
Oh yeah.
And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm talking about hearts. How does our heart burn within us? And I do. I think that, again, we sometimes just take for granted, those encounters and those experiences with the Lord. But, I think it's awesome. They didn't even know he was there. They didn't recognize it. They didn't recognize he was there. And so then they're like, when their eyes are open and they realize, man, it wasn't just about, it was that there was something inside as we were being a part of what he was saying and what he was doing and, what he was telling us that was burning inside of us. And I think as the church, if we're going to grow, if we're going to build, if we're going to be that church that we need for this season and this day, we've got to have that awe-struck feeling of what God is doing, and I think that was, I think when they say their heart burned within them, they're kind of like saying, wasn't that amazing how that, he was able to show us these things? And I think that if we can sometimes open our eyes enough to see, isn't it amazing what God is doing? Isn't it, and to be able to experience that thrill in your heart and in your spirit that, wow.
Yeah. So I think it's like you were teaching on this Sunday, and I was sitting there and I was remembering back to like my first experience with Jesus, like when Jesus became real to me. Like I grew up in church, but I can remember vividly the moment at 16 years old at a youth conference where like it became real. Like it wasn't just a story that I heard. It was now like God, I felt like God was calling me specifically. And there was this, I remember walking away from that and like being so excited to read the word in a new way and like to just really be hungry for God's word. And we, talk about that being like the first love with Jesus that we have. And I think that that's something we always have to we have to guard that in our life. It's like, you get in a relationship with someone and over time, sometimes it becomes like you're so used to each other. Right. Yeah. And I think it's being conscious of like continually trying to fan that flame and reignite that and go, okay. And it's the same way with Jesus is like, how do we continually like lean into the fact of like, what he's speaking when we read his word and he's moving in the church in all of these amazing ways. And really just understand, can we get to that place again where our hearts burn for what God is doing?
Right.
And there's so much power in that.
Right. Absolutely. And even to take and, to recognize in yourself, maybe I haven't had that experience lately, then get somewhere, go to a conference, go to a special service, go to a concert. I guess they're coming back now.
Yeah. I heard they're coming back.
Mercy Me, November in Columbus.
Oh, there we go.
So, get to a conference, get to a concert, do something that can, ignite that again. And like you say, it's, we take for granted that, that we're okay. And every once in a while we need that heart check. We need that little heart check to say, I definitely know that God is real and this is where I'm supposed to be. And this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So, yeah.
So, yeah. You ended the day by you talked about 4 things that kind of can deepen our walk. And so I'm just going to kind of go over them and then you can kind of briefly explain them to us. The first one was this: regular encounters with God, kind of like what we were just talking about there. Hearing his voice, prayer, and discipleship. And now all of these are things we've talked about, in church, and we've all heard these words, but I think it was so cool to kind of come back to these 4 things because maybe we feel like they're basic, but I think they're great reminders of what we have to have these things, right? And so talk about these just kind of briefly about these 4 different things.
Well, and, I guess that list could have gone on and on and on, but basically, and someone had shared it in an article that I read, and I was like, the basic things that, we have to do, but also they're sometimes challenging things. These are sometimes challenging ones. They're not as easy as, well, go to church, you'll grow. Well, not necessarily, but I love, to have encounters, regular encounters with God or with Christ. And I think that, again, we have gotten to the place where we just take that for granted, and we don't really seek him out. And so, taking time to seek him out, taking time to put ourselves in positions where we can actually encounter his spirit and encounter him in new ways. But then it's also the easiest things. I mean, the other day, I mean, it's kind of silly, but the other day I looked out and I saw this. We have these cardinals who live in our backyard. They're just beautiful. But there was one that was so vividly red, and he was, I don't know if it's the girl or the boy, but I think it's the boy that's red. Okay. So anyway, so vividly red, and I'm just awestruck by it. I'm just like, God, how do you create such beautiful things, and how do you, and I just stood there at my kitchen window for a minute, and I just was I had this little moment with God of just, he is just so awesome. And just, if we just will not miss the littlest of things, we can have a little encounter right there. And, just, it doesn't have to be like this big shout it down, but just to have those regular times that you and he kind of have this, this connection, maybe, this connection. And so I think that's so important. And then, hearing his voice, I think it's important because I think people struggle with it. They just struggle. I think it's a faith issue.
Okay.
I think it's kind of, not that God's not speaking.
Yeah.
But it's just really to believe that God could speak to them and that God does speak to them, and so helping people to, I think that, there's a lot of value in somehow us teaching people how to recognize the voice of God, but you almost have to test it with your faith. You know what I mean? I mean, you almost have to test it and go, I think that was God. And then, reconfirm it. And pretty soon he'll reconfirm it again. It's like the whole, when you're putting together a message or you're getting ready to lead something, it's not the first time God said build to me that I was like, oh, he's speaking to me about that. Yeah. It was like the fourth or fifth time that I'm like, okay, God, I can tell you're speaking to me about this, but I think that, just to have the faith to know that he will, if you seek his face, if you seek him, he'll answer you, and I think sometimes people are just kind of afraid to do that. And then I think prayer and discipleship is just, as much as we all want to say, oh, yes, I do that. Yeah. We all struggle with it. We all struggle with it. Yeah. And, I thought when I got a job at the church, I'd be able to sit and pray all day. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I can pray and read my Bible all day long. My disciple, I should just really, this should be great. It was like, no, you still have to have that discipline on your own to do those things. And, it's really comes from it grows out of your heart. And so that's, I think, why God was showing me on Sunday, it's got to start with our heart. And, and I loved that how, there's so many times and I know I didn't do a real search on it, but how many times God says, I'll give you a new heart, so God knows that we need that little tune up every once in a while, and I guess that's what Sunday was about, is just, don't be afraid to go to the Lord and say, I just want a little tune up. I just need that, and so
I think God, Pastor and I have talked about this before, is that a lot of times we're scared to come to God with the uncertainty or maybe a lack of faith, or maybe we're struggling with certain things. We have a hard time because mentally we've created this idea that we have to be perfect, or we have to have it all figured out. And I don't think God's afraid or worried at all when we come to him, when we just hey, I just need a refresher. I need just some time. I just need to sit and just be here. You were talking about, looking at that cardinal out the window, and, with us, we're doing a transition here. And so we're kind of in the process of getting ready to move, and there's all these different things. Yeah. And so there's been a few moments over the past week where I've just had to stop, just put on some music and just sit in my living room and not do anything, but just kind of be in the moment and go, okay, God, I need some peace right now. I need to just know this is what you know what I mean? And I think it's okay to do that. And I don't think God looks at us any different. I think he encourages that because it is that time spent with him. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And what an awesome thing that he does for us when we know, I know what I need right now. I'm scattered on whatever. I need to just have the Lord just come around me and just slow me down, and give him and speak peace into my life. And that's growth. That's awesome when you get to that point where you're like, you know what, I know what I need. I need time with him. And then just to stop and say, I'm doing it. I don't care, I'm doing it. So, but
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for your message on Sunday. I thought it was phenomenal. I love the Legos and putting those together. I thought that was so cool that we all have a piece. We're all a part of the church, and it's time to just, place that piece where it needs to be. And so if you missed it, if you weren't able to see the service from this past Sunday, make sure you go back on YouTube and watch it. And also be sure to subscribe to our podcast, comment, all of those awesome things. And we'll be right back here next week for Between the Lines. We'll see you then.